You're listening to the Sermon Podcast for the Peak Church, located in Apex, North Carolina. Our church is striving to welcome all who are feeling disconnected from God. And so our hope is that over the next several minutes, you will connect with the God that we are talking about, and you'll resonate deeply with the life that this God wants for you. We hope you enjoy.
The scripture passage today is from the book of Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. Later that day, when evening came, Jesus said to them, "Let's cross over to the other side of the lake." They left the crowd and took him in the boat just as he was. Other boats followed along. Gale force winds arose and waves crashed against the boat so that the boat was swamped. But Jesus was in the rear of the boat, sleeping on a pillow. They woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we're drowning?" He got up and gave orders to the wind, and he said to the lake, "Silence, be still." The wind settled down, and there was a great calm. Jesus asked them, "Why are you frightened? Don't you have faith yet?" Overcome with awe, they said to each other, "Who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God.
I really hate losing. In all arenas of life, games, sports, whether or not I can arrive at my destination before the GPS says I will get there. But it's not just with that stuff. Again, life, it stinks to lose. And several years ago, I was doing a lot of losing. Lost my grandfather, who was the patriarch of our family, one of my spiritual heroes, mentor of mine. Lost a series of relationships and friendships just due to moving and different sort of tensions and circumstances. And truth be told, throughout all of those experiences, if you want the honest truth, I was losing faith. So I went and saw my pastor at the time. I was not yet a pastor, and just kind of laid it all out. I was like, this is all that's going on. My circumstances just stink. It feels like everywhere I turn, I'm losing stuff or stuff's going wrong, and I'm praying about it all the time, asking God for help, asking God to fix it, asking God for God to change it. And then that pastor said something to me that would go on to shape my imagination for years to come. He said, "The way I have understood God is the ultimate multitasker. While you and I are waiting on God to change our circumstances, oftentimes Jesus wants to change our hearts." More recently, I had a mentor say to me, whenever God is really slow to fix whatever is broken in your life externally, consider this an opportunity to look inward at the work, the transformation that God wants to do internally. And all of this pairs really nicely with this sermon series that we have been in for the last couple of weeks. If you're just joining us for the first time here in person or online, for the last several weeks we've been in a sermon series called Just Jesus. And in many ways, I like to think that this sermon series is kind of like a question. A question about what kind of expectations do we have of this Jesus? Is it possible that they're too small? Is it possible that they're too narrow? Is it possible that when it comes to faith, we go to Jesus when we just need one thing. I just need God to answer one prayer, provide one thing, fix one problem. Meanwhile, time and time again, we have a Jesus who is expanding our imaginations, doing not just the surface level work, but the deeper work. Time and time again, as the New Testament says, God is doing infinitely more than we can ask, think, or imagine. And there is no person, no group of people who understood this better than the disciples. Today, we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep journeying through the Gospel of Mark. This whole series, we're going to just be in the Gospel of Mark, going kind of chapter by chapter, bouncing around a couple different episodes in the story. And today, we're going to stop. We're going to camp out in chapter 4. And to give you a little context as to what's going on in this story, is Jesus and the disciples have been working for days, preaching, teaching, healing, helping, everywhere. And so, understandably, they're pooped. They reach the end of this long work day and they say, okay, well, we've also got a long day tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get in the boat. Let's go to the other side of the lake because we got to minister over there in that region, that city too. So they get out in this boat, cruising across the lake, and a storm hits. And it's a nasty one. The winds are tall, the waves are tall, the winds are really, really strong. Water's beginning to capsize into the boat. It's becoming swamped. And meanwhile, Jesus is passed out. My man is gone. You know people like this, by the way? You have people in your life who can sleep anywhere and everywhere. Quick show of hands. Let's just do this really quickly. How many of you have ever fallen asleep on a boat? On a boat. We got any boat sleepers? A couple of you. Very Christ-like of some of you. Okay, nice. Movies? Any movies sleepers? I think the older I get, I've not made it through many of them. How about outside? That one's weird for me. And some of you are falling asleep outside with the animals and the things. How many of you in church? Trick question, don't answer. Hey, no! All right, well, you told on yourself. All right, come and pray. Come and pray. It's a skill that apparently Jesus has. So he's passed out. This storm is raging all around him, and the disciples are freaking out. And I love that the author made sure to detail the exact question that they ask him. They turn to Jesus, they're shouting at him, they're screaming at him, I'm sure they're shaking his shoulders. And the question they ask, don't you care? Damn, that's a relatable question. I don't know about you, but that's the way I talk to Jesus. And some of my most scared moments, most anxious moments, that's the way I talk to him. Don't you care that I'm going through this? Don't you see the circumstances I found myself in? Don't you give a rip about all this that's happening to me and all that's being taken away from me and all the things, and how scared and how just absolutely terrified I am? Don't you care at all? What's fascinating is what takes place next. So we're told that Jesus wakes up, he calms the storm, and it seems as if Jesus has a question of his own. Don't you care? Don't you have faith yet? Don't you have belief yet? After everything you've seen me do, after everything you've watched me perform, don't you have, and Jesus is actually being very surgical, he's being very precise with his word choice here, don't you have pistis yet? That's the Greek word, and this pistis comes from the root word patho. Don't you have, this translates most accurately into English as, don't you have that inner confidence, that inner calm, that inner belief, that amidst your crazy circumstances, a belief that I'm still there and I'm still working and I still have a hand on you. The best analogy I have is, this is what airline pilots have whenever you're going through turbulence. You know what I'm talking about? How many of you do not like to fly? Very scary experience. Okay, very anxiety-producing experience, yes. And sometimes you'll be going through turbulence, and it's insane. You'll be going through turbulence, and it'll be Drinks are spilling, people are crying, babies are flying through the air. I've never seen that before, but I like to think that happens sometimes. And amidst the chaos, these jokers are cool as a cucumber. Attention passengers, we're going through a little turbulence here for the next couple of minutes, but enjoy your beverages and have a nice time. We'll be through it just momentarily, thanks. It's when they freak out that I freak out. But they don't. They never do. They're always calm. But my brother-in-law was trained to be a pilot. He's a brand new pilot. And I learned something from talking to him, that they've been trained in this. They've been trained to expect this. And coming back to the sermon series, sometimes when I read this passage, I begin to wonder if Jesus is doing some training of his own. When the storms of life hit, wherever those storms are for you, when it comes to health or your marriage or your kids or your job, when the storms come in, again, back to the series, sometimes we just use Jesus. We just go to Jesus when we just want one thing. Fix it, please, solve it. Get the storm away from me. That's all I need from you. That's all I want from you. And Jesus isn't cold. He isn't heartless. He has a plan to solve that storm. But meanwhile, he also wants to do some of that deeper work. He wants to calm the external and the internal storms in us. I like to say it this way, that Jesus trains disciples. He's training us to be those who can be steady amidst the storms of life, to be those who can be the calm in the storm. My friends in the black church say it this way. One of my black pastor friends says that you and I don't stand a chance of being an instrument of peace until you learn how to protect your peace. Seems fitting, seems timely. And so naturally, the next question becomes, well, good Lord, how in the world do we do that? How do we become someone who can be the steady, can be the calm, can be those who, yes, I want to be an instrument of peace, God, in your world, but it needs to start with me. How does it start with me? This is where I always want to offer a disclaimer that all of the strategies that Jesus gives to us here in Mark chapter 4, he's got 3 of them that I want to unpack that I think are really, really helpful. But anytime Jesus provides these strategies, quick disclaimer, just know, whenever we talk about the storms of life, what are we really talking about? We're talking about worry, we're talking about anxiety, and so all of these are never meant to be a substitute for good mental health practices. They're meant to be a supplement to, okay? Not a substitute, but what? A supplement to. Okay, and so let's go back to our passage. Because Jesus actually does have some really good supplements for us in terms of how do we protect our peace? How do we become those who are trained in calming those inner storms? Verse 39, when Jesus finally does come to, it says, he got up, gave the orders to the wind, and said to the lake, silence, be still. And I love this, that even the author is making the assumption that Jesus is only talking to the lake, that Jesus is only talking to the storm, the waters. But you see, again, word choice, very specific. For Jesus to have used the words, be still. You see, his disciples' ears would have perked up. They've heard that before. Where did they hear that? Psalm chapter 46, verse 10. It's that iconic line. What does the psalmist say? Be still and know that I am God. And so we can probably confidently assume that Jesus ain't just talking to the storms, he's talking to you. He's talking to me. He's talking to his disciples. That when the storms come in, we need to be silent and be still. And by the way, this is not like a vocabulary lesson, but I'll do one more real quick. The word for silence there in the Greek, actually literally translating to English, is hush. I love that so much. When you're freaking out, the storms are coming in, shush, like hush for a daggone minute, right? Jesus essentially is giving us this first strategy that if you and I want to experience and we want to cultivate, we want to guard that peace inside of us, we're going to have to incorporate into our spiritual diet some practices of silence and stillness. And this is very timely because, good God Almighty, that's the last thing I am when the storms of life are raging around me. I talk to everybody. I complain to everybody. Anybody and everybody who will listen, I'll complain all day long about the things that I'm going through, and I'm an external processor, and so I'll also problem solve. I'll go, what do you think about this solution? What do you think about that solution? You think that would work really, really well? Some of you do this on Facebook, right? You get there and you just hammer on that keyboard all the things that you're frustrated or scared or anxious about. This is the last thing that many of us are or think we need to be. We think when the storms come in, I got to get active. I got to get moving. I got to get talking. I got to get sort of in solution mode to sort of see if I can fix this for myself. Maybe that's why one of my favorite prayer practices, one of the most effective prayer practices for me is using what's called a prayer labyrinth. How many of you have ever used a prayer labyrinth before? Some of you who've been a part of our church for a while, you know that every Holy Week, we take out all the chairs in this room, and we put out a huge mat that looks just like this here in this room. And essentially, a prayer labyrinth sounds fancy and intimidating, but it's just a prayer tool that's been used by Christians for hundreds of years that is meant to help you use that time most effectively. What do I mean by that? The way it works is, again, it looks kind of like a maze, but the way it works is when you enter into a prayer labyrinth, on the walk in towards the middle, you're supposed to release. And this is the part we all know. This is the part we're all confident and competent in, right? I'm good at the releasing and the complaining part. I'm good about the first 10 minutes going, I'm mad about this, I don't trust you with this, I'm ticked off and hacked off about this, I'm terrified about that. It's the next part that we often skip. In the labyrinth, this is what it forces you to stay in the middle and sit and listen for God. What might you be trying to say to me? What might you be trying desperately to get my attention with? And I share this with you because you don't need a fancy prayer labyrinth mat here in this building to do this. You can do this anywhere. But it's about structuring your prayer time to make sure you don't just do the first part. How often does our prayer life just only include the releasing? How many of us actually make time and space to do some receiving of what it is God might be trying to show you, change your perception on? So the first strategy Jesus has for us is if you want to be the calm in the storm, you're going to have to learn how to be comfortable in silence and stillness so you can hear what it is I'm trying to say to you. Verse 38, let's go back up a verse. He gives another one. Verse 38, I love this so much. Did you catch this? But Jesus was in the rear of the boat, sleeping on a pillow. You might catch that very specific detail, right? Just, by the way, this is helpful for you to know. Of all of the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Mark is by far the one who gives the least amount of details ever. You know people like this in your life? You'll ask them for details about a story, and they just give you facts. Cold, hard, bullet point facts. Some of you are married to these people, and you'll find out that someone broke up or something like that. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, what happened? I want to know everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, they're just not together anymore. Right? So they just give you the core basic facts. You're like, sweet Lord, okay, well, I'm going to text everybody and try to figure out what actually happened here. That's who Mark is. This is the way in which Mark go and read the Gospel of Mark on your own. This is the way he tells the story of Jesus. He went here, said that, moved on. Like, that's the way he tells the story. So for him to include this detail, this very odd, very specific detail, that Jesus made sure not to forget his pillow, feels very on purpose. What could it mean? Well, maybe Jesus is kind of like us in this regard. That it would have been really tempting on that boat ride to spend that entire time processing with the disciples, everything that he had taught, everything that he had done, answer all of their 5,000 questions about what it is he meant by that parable he just told, right? It was probably really tempting to Jesus to be like, okay, well, Okay, we just left that town. Once we arrive in this town, we need to go here first, there first, meet with these people first, and then go there next to use this whole time productively, right? To be efficient and to have a plan for where he's going next. But Jesus, we are told in Philippians chapter 2, when he became human, he emptied himself of divine privileges. This means that he's now able to die. He's able to catch colds. He's able to get tired. And so perhaps the reason why that pillow was a very, very purposeful companion for him is because he needed a reminder. He needed a barrier to protect him from allowing the storms, allowing the constant activity to take over his life. And so in so doing, he's kind of giving us this second strategy that if you want to be the calm, if you want to be more of the calm in the storm, if we want to get better at protecting our inner peace, we're going to have to learn how to alter our environments. Much like Jesus just did. He altered that environment to make it a space of rest and peace for himself. Maybe for you, especially in this season, while you cannot change everything that's happening around you, you can change your own circle. You can change the things that are in your control. And so maybe for some of you, again, you can't change the dialogue in this country, but you can change how much time you spend on your daggone phone. You can erect physical barriers and boundaries to stop you from spending all of your time watching every news channel 24/7 all the time. You can put barriers and reminders in your life to get out of your head and get into your body, to exercise, to walk, to move, to keep yourself healthy. You can put barriers and reminders in your life to, like Jesus, rest, right? I saw this shirt out in the wild a couple of days ago, and I loved it so much. Amidst all the incredibly revelatory things Jesus said and did, maybe, for you, it's as simple as, do you have any barriers reminding you to take a daggone nap? Get the rest that you need. Anne Lamott, one of my favorite authors, said it this way. She said, when something's not working appropriately, oftentimes you can solve it by unplugging it and plugging it back in. And she said, and I think oftentimes the same is true of us. You want to be that calm in the storm. You want to be that person who protects your peace. You can't do it on your own willpower. All the studies have shown this, that human beings who rely on their own willpower, someone who's like, I don't want to eat any more snacks, so I'm just going to stand at my pantry and no, not going to eat them. I'm going to eat them. Yeah, I'm going to eat them. That doesn't work. It's the people who have removed the snacks from their pantry. It's the people who have put the physical barriers in their life. Those are the people who are 43% more likely to actually make an actually substantial change to their behavior. What barriers, what boundaries do you need to create? Do you need to bring back? And Jesus gives us one more. End of the passage ends this way. Verse 41. And so after all this, overcome with awe, they said to each other, who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him. They're overcome with awe. They're shocked. They're surprised. Why? Because this is not how they thought the story was going to end. Was it? They did what all of us do when the storms come in. They had already arrived at the worst possible conclusion. They already predicted the worst possible scenario. Did you catch this in verse 38? Don't you care that we're drowning? You're doing a lot of talking for someone who is presumably drowning. You're not drowning. You convinced yourself you're drowning. You told yourself that you were going to drown. You already prepared for the worst thing to happen to you. And so what have they done? They've written the conclusion of their story without who? Without him. He ain't anywhere in their imagination. And so I think in so doing, what Jesus is doing here in this moment is he's giving us one more strategy, which is when you find your mind running to all of these worst possible scenarios and conclusions to your story, maybe it's sort of regaining control and rewriting the conclusions that you tell yourself. And make sure the conclusions that you write about the storm that you're facing have Jesus in them. Jesus is present in them. He's active in them. He's at least a character on the scene. Why? Because when Jesus is in the conclusion of the story that you tell yourself, he changes stuff. Now, to be very clear, that is not to say that he's automatically going to give you the outcome and the ending that you want. But he does absolutely change where that story winds up. If you are someone today who's in a broken relationship or you're in an awful job situation, imagining Jesus in the end of the story is not to say that it's going to just automatically work out for you. But it is a proclamation. It is a declaration that so long as Jesus is involved, he's going to provide. That's what I choose to believe in those moments. I don't know if God's going to fix this thing, but I know in the end, God will provide what it is that I need. God will provide another job, another person in the place of this relationship. I know, I trust that God is active and will provide what it is that I need. Good God, when you look around at our world and you look around at our country, you look around at the storms that we're facing there, storms of all this division, all this hate, all this injustice. Imagining Jesus at the conclusion of that story is not to say that it's going to get better overnight. It's not going to get better by tomorrow. But it's a belief, it's an inner confidence, it's a pistis, it's a deep, deep trust that Jesus right now, at this very moment, is actively recruiting and raising up bridge builders and unifiers and helpers and justice seekers for you and I to emulate and to follow. It's to believe again that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we do know who holds the end of the story. And to quote the great Martin Luther King Jr., we know that the arc of the universe is long, the arc of history is long, but it's always bent towards what? Justice. It's always bent towards love. However the story ends, it ends with him making it all new. And I don't know, man, I think about my own life, and I think about what this means if I carry it all the way out, if I carry it all the way through. What this means for me is I'm trying to arrive at a faith. I want to have a faith. I don't know if I have it today yet, but dadgummit, I want to have a faith that when it's clear that the storm that arrives in my life is that of death. When it arrives in the form of an illness or a disease that I won't beat, and Jesus doesn't heal me in this life, I want to have a faith, a belief, a deep trust that in those moments, those closing moments, he's going to be closer to me than he ever has been before. And when I awake, I'll wake up in his arms. I'm curious what conclusions you've been living in lately. I'm curious which conclusions you've already assumed are gospel truth. I'll close here. I ain't got to tell you. I ain't even got to tell you how stormy it is right now. You know. And that's on top of the personal storms that many of you are facing. Some of you are facing things that have left you so confused, so disoriented, so full of doubt, that even to walk into this building today, you're like, no. And I hear that. Good God, I've felt that. And at the same time, the thing I want to leave you with today is something the New Testament seems to say with some regularity. Over and over again, the authors of the New Testament seem to say that there's really just two outcomes to this. There's kind of two types of people in this world. There are those who have encountered and they protect that peace that passes all understanding. There are those who they allow the peace of Christ to come in and guard their hearts, and as a result of that, they are able to be the steady and the calm amidst the storms. Meanwhile, there are also those, I'm thinking of James chapter 1, I'm thinking of Ephesians 4, where it says that there are those who become captive to the storms. They live their whole life and they're just tossed to and fro every day. Whatever force is strongest that day, that's the thing that has its way with you, and you're there and you're here and you're lost and you're disoriented, and then you respond maybe in anger and you create a storm of your own. Put simply, the New Testament time and time again seems to say that you can either work on becoming the calm in the storm, or inevitably, you'll be a contributor to the storm. You'll become a victim to the storm. And so maybe as we close today, the question before you is rather simple. Which one you want to be?
Thank you for listening to the Peak Podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever podcasts can be found. For more information on how to get connected with our church, please visit us at thepeakchurch.org.